Hey, this is the video review for World War II. Please note this video comes after a separate video that is on the causes of World War II. So this one picks up where that last one took off. All right, the first thing we're going to take a look at are the important people that you need to know. The World War II is a battle between the Allies and the Axis powers. And the Allies are the people in the top row. The Axis is in the bottom. All right, so first let's start on the top left. That is Winston Churchill. He is the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Remember, Winston Churchill takes power after Chamberlain leaves office. If you remember from the causes of World War II, Chamberlain is the person who believed in the policy of appeasement. If you remember, Chamberlain had met with Hitler at the Munich conference, and at that event, Hitler had said after taking the Sudetenland, he would not conquer any more territory. Instead, 6 months later, he conquered the rest of Czechoslovakia. At that point, it was clear that the policy of appeasement had failed, and Chamberlain leaves office and Churchill takes over. Next is Roosevelt. This is FDR. FDR Roosevelt. This is the guy in the wheelchair. Teddy Roosevelt, different president. He actually, you don't have to worry about him. You'll study him in American history. Anyway, just know this is FDR. He's the guy in the wheelchair. He is the U.S. president. Next comes Joseph Stalin. He is the leader of the USSR. You should remember him from the presentation on totalitarianism. He was a totalitarian leader. He was a communist, right? At the start of the war, he is actually going to be on the side of the Axis. He's going to be not in the midst of fighting, but he forms an alliance with Hitler at the beginning of the war. And so at the beginning of the war, he's he's staying out of the war, but had an agreement with Hitler. But after Hitler betrays Stalin and attacks the USSR formally joins the war as part of the Allies. And we're going to go into that in detail. The last person on the right, that's Charles de Gaulle. He is the leader of France. As you're going to learn later, France is going to be conquered during World War II. And during that era where France is under occupation by German forces, the German government is what they say, it rules like an exile. It basically, the French government has to stay somewhere else since their country is occupied. But there are French soldiers still fighting on the Allied side throughout the war. On the bottom row, that is the Axis, okay? The first person is Hitler. He is in charge of the Nazi government of Germany. We're just, they're the bad guys, okay? We're just going to be very clear about that. The Nazis are the bad guys in World War II. Pretty cut and dry. So Hitler is, again, you should also know him from the totalitarian presentation. Hitler, as well as the person next to him, which is Mussolini. They are both totalitarian leaders, but unlike Stalin, they are fascists. So Hitler and Mussolini are both fascists. That means they believe in extreme nationalism. Mussolini is the fascist leader of Italy. The final person persons, plural, on the bottom, those are the leaders of Japan. Japan is a little tricky because they're not, it's not technically a totalitarian government because government is really split. The person on the left is Tojo. He is a military dictator for Japan, but he really shares power with the person on his right, which is Emperor Hirohito. At the time of World War II, there is a lot of nationalism in Japan, and there is a belief that the Emperor of Japan is like a god, basically a godlike figure, or crosses over into actually being considered a god. So they both share power. All right. So moving forward, the first thing you have to remember is you should recall the lesson of World War I, because that's very important. Take a look at this map. All right. We know from the video with the causes of World War II, we know that Hitler is very aggressive and that he wants to, he has grand plans for his country. He wants his country to be more powerful. He wants them to gain back territory. However, he can't make the same mistake that was made in World War I. If you remember in World War I, the big reason Germany the big reason Germany lost is tied to what you see on this map. Take a look at where Germany is located. You see, Germany is located in the middle of the European continent. And that is very dangerous because that means it's very easy to attack Germany on multiple sides. All right, and that's what ended up happening in World War I. Germany was forced to fight a two-front battle. Even though Germany had the strongest army in Europe, it had fighting on both the Western and Eastern fronts, and that eventually led to Germany's defeat in World War I. So clearly, for Hitler, there's no way he wants to go into a war and have this same problem. He's got to make sure that the battle will that he's going to only fight at one front at a time. He doesn't want to have to split his forces. So basically the way he does that is to make an agreement with the Soviet Union. Actually, if I'm going to go back to the other slide again, if you remember, if we looked at the list of Axis powers, right? You remember Germany is an Axis power, and so is Italy, which is very close, which is south of Germany. In addition, if you remember from the causes of World War II, remember that the first country that Germany takes over is Austria. That's the purple country on Germany's southern border. In addition, Germany will take the Sudetenland and later the rest of Czechoslovakia. That's also on its southeastern border, right? That pinkish country right there on the border of Germany. Finally, the country that Germany conquers right before the war starts, this is the one that is the immediate cause of World War II, is Hitler's invasion of Poland. So you can see from the map that before the war starts, Germany has its southern border is solid, all right? And you can see the other country that's there, it's hard to see, it's blurry, is the country between Germany and Italy that I didn't mention, is that pink one. That's Switzerland. Switzerland is always neutral, always, always. They're famous for that, for always staying neutral. So Germany's southern border is solid, okay? That's protected. He's got possession of all of the powers there. But on one side, he's got France. On the other side, he has the Soviet Union. And so what he's going to do is Hitler is going to make an agreement with Stalin to make sure the Soviet Union will not attack Germany. If he keeps the Soviet Union out of the war, okay, they don't need to the Soviet Union doesn't need to fight with the Axis powers. They just have to agree to stay out of the war. As long as that happens, Germany is pretty okay to fight, because then they just have to worry about their border with France, all right? And that's where their attention is going to go. So like I said, they make the agreement. That's where that political cartoon comes in with the two of them as if they're in wedding dresses and things. And they sign a non-aggression pact. According to the non-aggression pact, you can see that on this map on the left, Germany is marked GER, USSR is marked with that the brightest green on the right. In between Germany and the USSR, that's Poland. And if you notice, Poland is actually split in half. That kind of olivey color, that's the section of Poland that Germany will get. And you can see Eastern Poland is going to go to the USSR, along with Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Germany and the USSR signed this agreement. They agree that they're not going to attack each other for 10 years. And in exchange, Germany says to Stalin, take Eastern Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. They're yours to conquer and to keep. And that's what ends up happening. Now, if you notice on that cartoon, on the bottom there's a line of text. The line of text reads, "Wonder how long the honeymoon will last." And the reason for that is that Hitler had made no secret of the fact that he absolutely hated communists, that he hated Slavic people, that they were beneath him, that they were a lower race. And he had also made no secret of the fact that he was after Lebensraum, which means living space, more land for the German people. And had talked about the fact that he wanted to expand into Slavic territory. He had done all this in his book, Mein Kampf, right, which means My Struggle. But nonetheless, even though he had all these beliefs, Stalin still took him at his word, made this agreement with him. Again, Hitler had not proven himself to be a person who kept his word. He lied to the Allies many times, but for whatever reason, Stalin made this agreement with Hitler. But even as this agreement is made, everyone else on the outside is thinking this agreement is not going to last. And everyone who doubted them was right, because what ends up happening is once Hitler makes the agreement with Stalin and knows that his eastern border is safe, he is going to move into Poland, all right? And he has his strategy that that Hitler uses is known as the Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg literally means lightning war. It's this overwhelming force that Hitler comes in with huge armies and many, many men and conquers you very, very quickly. And he's able to do that because the European continent, that part of Europe where they're located, really doesn't have many natural barriers. I mean, the Alps are in Switzerland, but really most of this European continent is pretty flat. So it's very easy to march your army across your border and conquer your neighboring territory. And what ends up happening is once he signs the agreement with the Soviet Union, he knows he's free to conquer the rest of Europe. But what ends up happening is once he is able to get the most of basically the European continent under his control, he betrays Stalin. And that's what you see in the picture to the right. Hitler is going to stab Stalin in the back. He is going to betray the non-aggression pact that they signed, and Hitler is going to march his army into the USSR. All right? And once he does that, that is when the Soviet Union joins World War II, becomes part of the Allies, and starts attacking Hitler. All right. And then later, the strategy is going to be to create, again, that two-front war. But we'll get into that later. All right. So like I said, as you can see from this map, thanks to the agreement that Hitler had made with the Soviet Union, his army, when I said it conquers basically all of the European continent, I wasn't kidding. Take a look at this map. You can see all this red and that pink color are all either occupied territories or German allies, independent states. Switzerland and Spain stay neutral throughout the war. They stay neutral. They are out of the war. They don't take sides. But everywhere else is conquered. That's why Hitler feels free to attack the Soviet Union, okay? The reason for having that agreement with the Soviet Union was to prevent a two-front war. Once he has control of the European continent, that's why Hitler feels that he is in a position of strength where he can betray the Soviet Union. All right, now while all of this is going on, the United States follows a strict policy of isolationism. We stay out of it. As far as our government is concerned, that is a European war. It is European problems. It has nothing to do with us. That's why this political cartoon, which you should recognize the style. This is Dr. Seuss. He has this cartoon where you have where you have Uncle Sam, who is the representation of America, is basically sleeping in one bed, where very close by, Europe is in another bed. Europe is clearly sick, has all of these horrible diseases, but the America is sleeping soundly, saying, "Oh, this is great. We've got separate beds. I'm safe." It's basically the idea of the cartoon. But in reality, he's not safe. It's only a matter of time before the sick people in the European bed make Uncle Sam sick. And that was the point of this cartoon. A lot of people in America said, this policy of isolationism, you think the fact that we've got the Atlantic Ocean separating us from Europe means that we're safe. We're not safe. Once Hitler conquers all of Europe, it's going to have a big impact on the United States, either directly from him attacking or just, international relations wise. What's going on in Europe impacts the United States. We can't stay isolated. Nonetheless, although there was debate at home, the United States maintains a policy of isolationism until we are attacked. It is not until Japan bombs Pearl Harbor that the United States will enter World War II. But we really did not want to be part of this war. We tried to stay out of it for as long as we could. However, I will note, we were involved to an extent because we provided the Allies with weapons and we provided them with money. So, we were supportive of them, but we did not act directly in the war and take part in the war and send soldiers and really fight in the war until we get bombed during Pearl Harbor. All right, this is a really quick overview of the main key events and turning points of the war. Start at the top. Like I said, that non-aggression pact between Germany and the USSR is really important. It is not until that agreement is signed that Hitler knows he can attack Poland and be okay. And it is the attack of Poland, it is that invasion of Poland that begins World War II. After that, once he invades Poland, the next big turning point is where Hitler is going to conquer France. And you can see that's a picture of Hitler right in front of the Eiffel Tower. There's also that very famous picture of a Frenchman crying as he sees the Nazi soldiers march through the streets of Paris. And France will be occupied for much of the war. Like I said, when I showed you that map, after Hitler gains control of basically all of continental Europe, basically everything except for Britain, he's powerful enough to take on the Soviet Union. Oh, I should note, after Hitler conquers France, the only major Allied power to stand against him is Britain. That's what this is saying. Germany takes France and the Battle of Britain begins. Let me just show you. What ends up happening is, you can see from this slide, is that during the Battle of Britain, London and all the cities in London are getting bombed like almost daily. For as you can see, it's from September to May of 1940. It goes on for a really long time. It's almost a year. It goes September, October, November. Yeah, it's 1940, 1941. Anyway, the reason why Britain is able to make it and to survive it is because they have radar to know when the planes are coming, and Enigma, they were able to translate the German messages. So they're able to send signals and send the sirens, and then the people of Britain would hide. As you can see in the top picture, that's all of the British citizens hiding in the tube, which is the other word for the British subway system. And you can see on the bottom picture, even in the midst of the bombings and things like that, towns are destroyed, homes are destroyed, factories are destroyed. It's bombed, terribly. But yet you can see as this woman's going to get married, life had to go on because it went on for such a really long time. All right, so that's the Battle of Britain. Like I said, the little red pop-up, the Blitzkrieg Geography, again, I mentioned that before. The fact that Hitler is able to be so successful conquering Europe is thanks in part to the geography, the flat geography of Europe, where there aren't many natural barriers. That makes his army very successful. And so that allows him to invade Poland, to take over France. Britain, of course, is a little different. Britain ends up having the advantage of their geography, which is that they are an island nation. So Hitler is never able to completely conquer them, although the bombing of Britain really does do a number on them. All right, like I said, once France is conquered, once Britain is severely weakened due to the daily bombings, Hitler is going to turn on Stalin and invade the Soviet Union. But the big mistake he makes is he basically makes the same mistake that we saw with Napoleon, which is that he invades in the spring, but he is there for the Russian winter. The Russian winter, was so cold, it blocked his supply line. Supplies couldn't get through. It was so cold. Supposedly fuel was freezing. Machines didn't work. The tanks wouldn't work. And so the geography of Russia, the cold Russian winters, really kept Hitler from being able to beat Russia. And just like Napoleon, that was a big turning point for Hitler, where his army is really weakened and very much weakened from attacking Russia. All right. In addition, what happens around this time too is that in 1941, the United States is going to enter the war after Pearl Harbor is bombed. All right, so now that the U.S. has joined the war, they have fresh troops ready to battle. You have basically, you have troops, Russia is available, Britain is available, but remember the rest of the continent is really controlled by Hitler. But what happens is a decision is made that they need to create a two-front war. So you can see on this map, D-Day was that invasion where soldiers from British, American, Canadian soldiers leave England, cross the English Channel, and invade France. They come in on the beaches of Normandy, and D-Day is an incredibly important battle because it is thanks to D-Day that World War II will become a two-front war. D-Day is the other big turning point. Again, you should have seen, if you haven't already, you can check out, there's a big movie known as Saving Private Ryan that has a great scene of D-Day where you can watch the soldiers invading. If you haven't seen it, check it out on my website. All right, so thanks to the D-Day invasion, again, the war is going to, the war is going to become a two-front war against Germany, and that's going to severely weaken Germany between D-Day and the invasion of the Soviet Union. Those two things together are going to really bring the war to an end for Germany. For Japan, one of the big turning points was the Battle of Midway. That's where the United States takes out much of the Japanese Navy. And right after the Battle of Midway, that's where Japan starts getting weaker, and the U.S. strategy called island hopping, where they start to invade all the smaller islands, starts to become very effective against Japan, and that is going to help bring to the end the Japanese, the war in the Pacific. Remember, World War II is a huge war, takes place across much of, it takes place in, there's battles in Africa, there's battles in the Middle East, there's battles in Europe, and there's battles in Asia. In global history, for purposes of the regions, we focus most of our attention on the war in Europe, with a little bit in Asia. In the U.S. history, you'll focus more on the Asian war because that's really where the United States was involved. So what happens is the end of the war actually comes in two parts. The European theater, that one ends on VE Day. After the Battle of the Bulge, that's where Hitler is defeated. I don't know if you ever heard about, Hitler being in his bunker where he commits suicide with him and the new wife, the girlfriend. Anyway, Hitler commits suicide. So the battle with Europe is over. However, Japan does not give up. Japan does not surrender. So even though Hitler and his forces have surrendered, the battle in the Pacific, the battle against Japan, continues. And the battle with Japan will not end until the U.S. drops atomic bombs on the city of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Once that happens, that is going to end the war in the Pacific. The Japanese will surrender, and that is what finally ends World War II once and for all. But we're going to talk about that in the next video. All right. So thank you so much for watching. And like I said, please go check out the part 2 of this video on World War II.